So good evening, nice to see you all. As many of you know, I'm continuing this Introduction to Mindfulness meditation series. Today is class 4. It'll be the last class on mindfulness meditation. I'll be continuing in other weeks after this with some other topics related to meditation. But the Introduction to Mindfulness meditation was these 4 weeks. So maybe I'll just give a brief review of what we talked about the first 3 times we met. So the first time I emphasized mindfulness of breathing, just resting the attention on the experience of breathing. And I'm emphasizing this word experience or sensations rather than thinking about breathing, rather than imagining the breath going in and out or some other things. That's another way to meditate. But for mindfulness, we're just staying with the actual experience. And this alone can be a practice to distinguish, well, what is it about to think about breathing and what is it to experience breathing? And for me, I sometimes would I would consider that the experiences don't necessarily have words. It's just an experience. Whereas to think about breathing is words primarily. So that could be one way to make a distinction. And so when I'm doing guided meditations, I'm often talking about the sensations of breathing rather than the breath or breathing, just to highlight this embodied experience of just the body breathing. The body knows how to breathe. We're just tuning into it. So that's at the core of this mindfulness meditation, at least like in this mindfulness movement, we might say, and certainly here at IMC, we have that kind of like as the default, mindfulness of breathing. For some people, the breath is not such a good object because it's not very neutral. In particular, if you have asthma or something, you might be associations of not being able to breathe well or something. And in that case, we can recommend doing mindfulness of sounds. Just kind of like opening up and just listening to sounds. It's surprising that even though we're all sitting here silently, there are plenty of sounds. There's outside, inside, all this kind of thing. So that can be an alternative to the breath. And then on the second week, talked about mindfulness of the body, recognizing that sometimes the body is uncomfortable. In fact, if you were to just notice, or maybe if there were a video camera on somebody who was just sitting in a chair, no audio, just a video, you would notice that they adjust their posture, every few minutes. This is just what we do. And the reason why is because there's a little bit of discomfort. We don't even notice. We just shift our posture. But with mindfulness meditation, we're, for the most part, maintaining the same posture, and then we're noticing, oh, yeah, that's uncomfortable. I have an itch, or my knee hurts, my back is bothering me, or something like this. And of course, we don't want you to injure yourself or, push yourself beyond what's appropriate. But there is an opportunity to see if you can learn something about what your patterns of behavior are when there's something uncomfortable, and to stretch your capacity to be with things that are uncomfortable. Turns out that this human experience has a lot of uncomfortableness, and there's freedom to be found if we don't always have to avoid it, but instead we can acknowledge, yes, this is uncomfortable, and not have to run away, and not have to make it be different. So that was the second. It's the breath and then the body. And one way they work together is we have the breath as the anchor. And if the body becomes compelling, itch, I'm saying knees and back because this is what's very often what's uncomfortable when we're starting a meditation practice. Then we just let go with the breath and be mindful of the body, the bodily experience, feeling it, sensing it, tuning into it. When it's no longer compelling, we just come back to the breath. So in a relaxed, easy way, breath, body, breath, 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 body, breath. It could be something like this. Third week, last week I talked about emotions and recognizing that emotions are, a beautiful part of the human experience, and sometimes they're troubling too. And freedom in this arena is to have the freedom to not be afraid of any emotional experience, to have the confidence that I can feel terrible grief, I can feel rage, I can feel envy, I can feel bitterness, whatever it might be. And so to have this way that, okay, I can experience them, but I won't feel overwhelmed. I don't have to act them out. I don't have to avoid them. Instead, I can allow them to arise and pass away. And one way that we do that is to tune into what I like to call the somatic signature for each emotion. How does anger feel in the body? Often, like, for example, there's like heat in the face. Sometimes there can be like this like energy in the hands. Sometimes the body leans forward a little bit. It's not necessarily the same for everybody, but there's some common things that we might recognize with each emotion. And then to tune into the bodily experience and let all the thoughts just do what thoughts do. They spin around. We'll just let them do that. And we'll tune into the bodily experience. And in this way, we are honoring and respecting our emotions, taking care of them. We're not repressing them. We're not pretending they're not there. But we're also not falling into them and being pushed around by them. Instead, there's a certain amount of dignity. Like maybe I've done plenty of meditation with tears, with sadness. I've also had tears of immense joy with meditation. So to tune into the bodily experience, part of the reason to tune into the body is so much more tangible. It's just easier to feel bodily experiences, sensations in the body, whether it's tightness or tingling or heat or throbbing or the sense of wanting to jump out or a sense of wanting to collapse. All these things are so much easier to tune into, and we often have less judgment about them, so we can hold them. Like, yeah, sadness feels like this, and to feel it, and allow the emotion to arise and pass away. So this week, I'd like to build on all the 3 preceding weeks and talk about mindfulness of thinking. Of course, thinking is such a big part of our life, our experience. And there's a reason why it's the 4th week and not the 1st week. There's 2 primary reasons. One is it's not so easy. So it helps to have had some practice with some mindfulness in general before we turn towards mindfulness of thinking, because usually what happens is we are just maybe like turn towards the thought and off we go. We're just lost in the thought and the planning, the groceries we're going to get, or rehearsing that conversation we had earlier that irritated us, or whatever it might be. So one reason is just to have a little bit more experience with mindfulness before we turn towards mindfulness of thinking. And a second is, it turns out that the body, mindfulness of the body, is a tremendous support for mindfulness of thinking also. In some ways, this is a false dichotomy, but in some ways we can consider that the human experience has the bodily experience, the somatic, kinesthetic, embodied experience, and there's the mental experience, where there's the thoughts that just do what thoughts do. They go round and round, try to solve things, make things better, of course. They're a beautiful thing, thoughts. But I'll touch onto that a little bit later tonight about how mindfulness of the body can be a support for mindfulness of thinking. But before I do that, I want to just ask you to imagine something. This isn't necessarily a guided meditation, but just to imagine that you're sitting on a riverbank. I got this from Gil Fronst. I learned this so many years ago, but I just love this. So you're sitting on a riverbank, and the temperature is perfect. It's warm, you're not too much sun, but there's a little bit of breeze. Maybe you just had a very nice lunch, so you feel content. Nowhere you need to be. You're sitting on the riverbank in a way that's really comfortable. However, whatever way is comfortable for you. On a bench or something. And you're just enjoying watching the river go by. Maybe you hear the birds. The water's just passing by. It's lovely. It's very nice. Sense of ease, contentment. And then you see a big ferry boat, and there's a huge party on this boat. There's dancing and singing, all this loud music. There's buffet tables, there's food. You can see all these people, and before you know it, boom, you've jumped on this boat. And you are at the buffet table, singing along, dancing, and having a great time. And you continue to be dancing and singing, but it just starts to feel a little empty a little bit. And then you remember, oh, right, I was sitting on the riverbank. And then you go back to the riverbank. Phew. Sitting there. Wow, it's nice to just feel like nothing needs to happen. Just peaceful. And then a battleship comes. You can see the cannons on board, and the soldiers are marching, and there's all kinds of artillery, and there's people with binoculars looking out, and before you know it, boom, there you are on this warship, and strategizing, and all this planning of how we're going to make everything safe and take care or retaliate or whatever needs to be done. And there's so much work to be done on this battleship, and to check all the artillery and make sure everybody knows their orders. And then this gets tiring. Oh yeah, I was meditating. I was sitting on the riverbank. And then you find yourself on the riverbank again. Phew. Just sitting there. Enjoying it. And then you see this poor beat-up raft. It's just barely floating by. Seems like it's held together with bubble gum and shoestring. It's just barely floating. This poor thing. It's dilapidated, not taken care of. And before you know it, boom, there you are on this raft, trying to hold it together and make sure it doesn't sink, hoping desperately that it'll stay afloat. Paddling with your hands. This poor raft. So you're not sure if it's going to make it. And and this gets exhausting too, a certain type of tiredness. And you realize, oh yeah, I was meditating. And you find yourself back on the riverbank. Probably doesn't take too much imagination to this simile of the boats on the river. Is often we jump on what I'll call these boats that are just going by, and there's a way that we jump on them and forget everything else and get completely lost in them and get caught up in whatever's on that boat. Entertainment, anger, revenge, poor me, poor raft. There's a way in which we might have a pattern of jumping on certain kinds of boats. Might have a pattern of, preferring to jump on some boats, and other boats, we just let those go by. But the other ones, we jump right on them. What would it be like to just stay on the riverbank and watch the boats go by? Maybe even be amused by the boats going by. Turns out that much of our lives is lived on one of these boats. Sometimes we don't even remember that the riverbank is available to us. A place of some quiet and contentment. So I'm going to do a guided meditation here. Taking a meditation posture, a posture that has both some alertness and some ease. Feeling the pressure against the body, where the chair or the cushion is contacting the body. We're here. Feeling the pressure on the back side, the back of the legs. And feeling the feet, what they are touching. Feeling connected, grounded. Then rest your attention on the sensations of breathing. Tuning into the experience of breathing. Feeling the body move as it breathes. And when the mind wanders, as it's apt to do, for now we'll just very simply, gently begin again with the sensations of breathing. Just hanging out with the breath. Nothing in particular needs to be happening. We're just noticing the experience of breathing. Just coming back to the breath, stabilizing, quieting the mind and the body. And now, when you find yourself waking up after being lost in thought, just notice, is there a category, a type of thought? Is there a type of boat? Planning, remembering, entertaining. Just make a small mental note, like a whisper in the mind. Planning. And then come back to the sensations of breathing. We don't have to turn thinking into the enemy or something we have to get rid of. For now, we'll just note the type of thoughts and come back to the sensations of breathing. Doesn't matter how many times you do this. In some schools of meditation, thinking is like considered more, something that you absolutely don't want to do. But in this style of meditation, it turns out this whole idea, this whole notion of distraction doesn't exist. Instead, we just can turn our mindfulness towards whatever's the most compelling, whether that's emotions, bodily thought, or the experience of thinking. In a moment, I'll talk more about how to be mindful of thoughts, but there's this way in which it's about a shift in our relationship to thinking. With meditation, we're not making them the enemy, nor are we just following them and doing whatever they say, like we often are doing during the day. Instead, we're taking a third stance. We're noticing them, but not getting involved with them, not necessarily believing them, not necessarily following whatever they are saying, but instead just maybe like emotions, honoring and respecting them, and yet keeping a sense of stability. Not so easy to do this. It's so often we are identified with our thoughts, and we might even feel like, well, who am I? Or does the world even exist if there aren't thoughts? Or something like this. I'll talk about that in a little bit too. But before I go there, I'd love to hear from some of you, either any questions about what I've said so far, or did you notice, was there like one type of boat that you liked to jump on more frequently? And did you know that about yourself? Was this new, or this whole notion of even the possibility of being on a riverbank, the bank, rather than on a boat? Or was that a new idea, or anything you'd like to share?
So the boat I realized I was jumping on was like a worrying boat. And I just find it interesting, just realizing that. But a question that I have is the point of meditation trying to realize when I'm jumping onto that boat, not when I'm meditating, like on my day, like normal day, or on another activity? Or is it a goal that I should just like focus on while I'm meditating, like realizing the thoughts that I'm having and just like come back to the breath? It's just like that question. Is it something that I can also like apply on a day-to-day basis, or is it only during meditation?
Yeah, thank you. This is a great question. So I would say meditation is more like a laboratory in which we can explore and learn things, but it's really for our life. It's really for our whole life. And part of maybe I feel funny kind of saying this word goal, but let's say the direction we're going, the orientation we're going, is for more freedom, for more ease in our life. And it turns out sometimes we get stuck in thoughts where we're just thinking the same thing over and over and over again, and the 5,000th time we think it's just not helpful. Or there's a way in which we are always, planning and feeling like our whole life is just one long to-do list. I got to take care of it. And meanwhile, our life is passing us by, but we feel like we need to plan. So first is to just recognize what we're doing. And then meditation helps the mind and the body to recognize, oh yeah, there's this, working on this simile. It's possible to sit on the riverbank while doing our chores, while working, while doing anything, talking to people that we care about, getting in an argument with people, that whatever it is, it's possible to be embodied and connected and steady and not being pushed around.
Thank you.
And I would say maybe that's the freedom, is to not avoid, and the freedom is to not be pushed around. I mean, life is going to bring us what it's going to bring us if we don't get to control the universe, of course. But wouldn't it be great if we could? Anybody else have a comment or?
For me, especially this week, it's been election stuff. There's just been so much insane stuff on the news. And I feel like I've spent some time this week realizing I'm on that boat. And I've also spent some time on this week choosing to be on the boat and choosing to get off. But sometimes that's not so conscious for me. So I've been having kind of both experiences.
And if you had to give kind of like a general tone or mood or attitude or something like this for the boat, what would you say with you said election stuff, that's more kind of the content, but is there,
With the election, or maybe like lots of things that are on the news, I think there's this feeling like there's something urgent going on that I can't do anything about. So there's definitely like this feeling of a sense of urgency, but without anything specific. It's not like planning where I can, if I'm planning a party, I can think about what tasks I'll do to get ready for the party. Whereas with the news, it's sort of like there is that urgency, but there's not, at least for me, there's nothing specific that I come up with right in the moment. It's more just I kind of just ruminate in thoughts about what other people are doing and what's happening far away.
Yeah. You didn't use this word. I'm going to use this word, but this feeling of helplessness, like, wait, there's all this stuff going on, and what can I do? And it's just happening, and all this. Yeah. It's an uncomfortable feeling, and it really grabs us. And as a society, we've created these news outlets who are designed to do this, so they're very effective, right? They're not. This is Diana's opinion. They are not. Let's just say this: they are for-profit businesses. So, they're going to do what they need to do to be profitable. Yeah, thank you. Anybody else have a comment or something they'd like to say or question? So, maybe I'll talk a little bit about how to maybe help us to not get so swept away by thoughts, or maybe not to find ourselves always jumping on the same boat. Or if we do find ourselves jumping on the same boat, what's something that we can do? And one is that usually I don't know if I can say 100% of the time, but it certainly is my experience, and many others, is that if there is a certain this pressure for thinking, this certain sense of, I have to think about this, there's this maybe even a sense of urgency or a sense of something needs to be done, and then we just find ourselves kind of in this loop and not really going anywhere. We can just ask this very simple question. We could just drop in the question, is there an emotion that's underlying this? Chances are, yes. Fear. Sadness that we don't want to feel. Anger that we don't want to feel. These types of things are underneath, and they're like little volcanoes. They're supporting all the thoughts that are happening up here, and this is kind of what the emotions are spewing or fueling them. Let's say that. That's kind of what's the energy behind these boats, and what maybe also kind of propels us to want to be on those boats. So one thing, if we find ourselves kind of stuck with our thinking, is to just drop in the question, is there an emotion underneath this? And it's not so much that we absolutely have to find the precise answer at that moment. It's the asking of the question. Because the asking of the question is this kind of is turning towards with respect, and kind of an opening up to listen to or feel into what's happening. It's something other than thinking. Because what the mind will like to tell you is, no, you have to think about the thoughts. And then you just think about thoughts, and that's just thinking. So it's a way to it's to shift our relationship and to change the experience from being lost in thought to being more embodied. So it might be sadness, and maybe just the word, or maybe there's a sense of sadness shows up, and then we're mindfulness of sadness. Mindfulness like, oh yeah, there's this lump in my throat, pressure behind my eyes, the shoulders feel heavy, and just be with the bodily experience. Let the content take care of themselves. Thoughts will just do what thoughts will do. We don't have to worry about them. But work can be with the emotion that's fueling them. Because once the emotion has a chance to be seen and recognized, then it'll stop fueling the thoughts. So instead of trying to put out a flame, instead we're going to just take out, put the cap on the fire, the gas hose. I don't know, whatever, you know what I mean. I was thinking about, where were those in Kuwait? Remember when they had all those, they couldn't put the fires out, the oil wells? It feels kind of like that, where there's all this fountain and this fueling coming up. So that's one thing to do, is if you notice that there's a lot of thinking or a certain pressure around the thinking, just to drop in and to ask, is there an emotion underneath here? Chances are very high it's yes. Because there's this way that we can't think our way out of thinking. Even though that's, this is our habit. It's what we do in the modern world. We've all been acculturated this way. We've been educated this way. Probably our professional lives are this way. Thinking is very important. And we don't need to do it as much as we do in the way that we do. Thinking is necessary to solve problems. There are problems to solve. But, even earlier today, I was trying to remember there was something I had to do. And I just found myself thinking about, okay, don't forget. And there's this way it was just staying with me. Like the 4th, 5th, 6th, 20th time I thought about it, that's probably enough. But there's a way in which we just kind of get stuck often in these loops. And then, our life is passing us by and it's pushing us around. So that's one way to be with the thoughts. Another way is I, during that guided meditation, encouraged you to maybe make a little note, planning, imagining, remembering, or something like this. And there's a way that making a little note can be really helpful, because to make a note creates a little bit of separation. There's the one who's making the note, and then there's the thinking. And that little bit of separation helps us to have a little bit more breathing room, so to speak. So even if you don't think about, or don't make a note like planning or remembering or whatever it might be, you could even use something like, thoughts. And this is sometimes what I'm doing. I'm just saying like thoughts, and then just come back to the bodily experience. Whatever, doesn't matter which bodily experience. Often it's can be like pressure, because that's the most obvious. So pressure on the bottom of the feet, or if we're sitting, pressure against the buttocks or something. Or another one, say, thoughts, and then maybe turn to sounds. And then tune into whatever the sounds are. Maybe tune into the birds. The point is to interrupt the momentum of the thinking. I mean, if more thoughts will arise, and that's perfectly fine, but there's a way in which we want to just not be lost in them and just following one after the other, from when we wake up until we go to sleep, just being pushed around by them. So that's the second way, is to thinking about oh my gosh, I just to use a small little note, and then to turn towards either a bodily experience or a sound. Here's a third way, is that thinking is, we might say, there has two parts to it. One is the content, the details of exactly what the thoughts are. And the second is you won't be surprised to hear me say this, the experience of thinking. And often we don't think about this, but the question could be, when you think, when you have thoughts, are they images? Is it a voice? What are thoughts? How do you experience them? Are they all the same? Like, are all of your thoughts like have the same color if they're images? And so this is another way in which we can shift our relationship to them. So we're no longer lost in them, but instead we are a little bit separate and we have this gap and we can see them. Oh yeah, that was a very interesting little short video there, just, remembering something that happened today. Or, oh my gosh, that was the voice of one of my parents yelling at me. Here I am decades later still hearing this, or, whatever it might be. And so that's another way in which we can honor and respect our thoughts. We're not trying to get rid of them. We're not saying they're bad. We're just no longer being pushed around by them. And again, we let the content take care of itself. We're looking at the process, the experience. So one could be, is it an image or is it a voice? And sometimes for some people, not everybody, for some people there's a feeling, there can be like a little energetic, buzzy feeling, like in the body. When there's a lot of thinking, there's a way in which there can be maybe pressure, or sometimes in the head. Maybe that's obvious or available, and maybe not. So in this way, we don't have to let go of or get rid of our thoughts, and we don't have to say, oh, this is terrible, or anything like this. Instead, we're just creating this space and interrupting the momentum. And in that space is where more freedom is. For me, sometimes it feels like maybe having been underwater, comfortably swimming, and then come up out of the water like, oh, wow, I can hear better out here. It's easier to breathe. And it's I can see further. It's kind of like that when the thoughts start abate, there's a way in which there can be more clarity. And you kind of like, oh yeah, that's right, I'm here, I'm doing this. Because there's this way in which it's kind of funny to think about it, but if we were all to imagine kangaroos in this room, tall ones that have the small little arms and they're moving. And we can just bring a kangaroo to mind. I was just doing that. Like, oh, but then I'm actually still here. The kangaroos aren't here. I'm just here. And you say, well, of course, Diana, but there's a way in which we tend to think that our thoughts are real, but they're not. They're just thoughts. They have no substance whatsoever. And you will have another thought, just a moment, whatever you're thinking now. So we give them so much authority, and we let them define ourselves, and we let them define others. So much suffering associated with that, so much suffering. So they're useful, we need them, but we don't have to be pushed around by them. So Let's do another guided meditation. Taking a meditation posture. And this time, let's begin with just 3 bigger breaths, just as a way to tune into the experience of breathing and to relax. Then letting the breath return to normal and just letting the body breathe. And again, we'll stay here for a little bit. Maybe we'll just take a moment to acknowledge the brilliance of the thinking mind. A lot of evolution has come to permit us to think whatever it is we're thinking, and thinking mind is amazing. But we're going to put it aside and just be with the sensations of breathing for now. You can pick up your regular thinking in a moment. Can you settle into the experience of breathing? This feeling in the body, the movement in the chest, movement in the belly. For now, we're letting the thinking recede into the background and the sensations of breathing being in the foreground. Can you give yourself over to the sensations of breathing? And now, if you find that thinking is taking prominence, you can turn towards it with calmness, deliberately, see it clearly, and maybe make a note thinking or planning or remembering, whatever it might be. And if it persists, see if you can look at the process of thinking, letting the content take care of itself. Is thinking images or a voice? If they're images, are they in vivid color? Are they in sepia, black and white? If it's a voice, whose voice is it? What's the tone of the voice? And then returning to the sensations of breathing. If there's a certain pressure with the thinking, you can gently inquire if there's an emotion that's fueling the thinking underneath it. And if the thinking has quieted down, just can return to the sensations of breathing in a relaxed, easy way. It might take a little bit more effort or determination to not get swept away in the thoughts. So we've spent a lifetime developing this habit, this pattern of thinking. And primarily we've been concerned with the content. But during that guided meditation, I asked you to look at the experience of thinking and to look at it maybe or consider it a different way with thoughts or images, or maybe you notice that, I don't know, maybe I'd love to hear from you all. Did you notice that it was more thoughts or images or both, or was it clear, was it not clear, or anybody like to share? Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I can start sharing about my experience. So I see a lot of things. So I realized that in my case, it's images, they're colorful. And one thing that I realized is that when I acknowledged them, it was like, okay, they're still there, but yeah, they were like pushing, it was like if I was like pushing them a little bit away, or they were like just pulling away. But in one case, there was like this very intense thought. Even though I was acknowledging it, it was like still there. It was not leaving. And I'm just curious, in those cases, what would you recommend me to do?
So what was so I call those like sticky thoughts that are a little bit sticky.
Yeah, it would like come back, or yeah, even though it was like, yeah, I'm thinking, like, I see you, you're there, it wouldn't go away. And I tried like coming back to my breath, and it was still like hanging out there.
And so what was your relationship to those sticky thoughts?
So I was feeling uncomfortable. I wanted it to like go away. It was like, I had enough of you, thank you. So yeah, that's how I was feeling.
Yeah. So of course this isn't uncommon when we start to see like, oh, some of the thoughts that we have. We have crazy thoughts sometimes, we really do. And so sometimes it's helpful, right, to notice, and they do just go away. But often there's thoughts that don't, they are persisting. And then what we notice is if we are like acknowledging them and being present for them, we often have an agenda. I'm being present for you so that you'll go away. And this kind of, so that you'll go away, is a way in which we're getting tangled up with the thoughts. And that kind of aversion is fueling. Just getting tangled up causes them to persist. Like this, what you resist persist actually turns out to be true.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, makes sense.
So part of it is is there a way that we can take some of the authority away from the thoughts? It's just a thought, or a family of 10 bazillion thoughts that, and is there a way that we can say, okay, these are thoughts, I'm going to have different thoughts in just a few minutes, or, that's so that then our relationship can shift, so that we're no longer resisting them or aversive towards them, and then they will kind of like start to peter out. But this definitely is not easy, and it's not fast or quick, right? We've spent a lifetime of our thoughts, running the show essentially, and for us to have a different relationship with them takes a little bit of time. But I appreciate your observation. It's great.
Oh, thank you.
Maybe way back in that corner there.
I really appreciate the suggestion to observe the experience of the thought, because I feel like that's a really quick way to help with my own cyclical thought patterns. I've noticed that I have thoughts that I'll continue going back to. So I'm just excited to try this exercise, that whenever whenever a sticky thought pattern comes up, to just really take a good look at it. Because sometimes I feel like I'll want to do like a deep breathing exercise, for example, to help me get out of that pattern, but that's not always accessible to me. But I think, again, like that seems to be an easier channel. Mm-hmm. And then maybe eventually I can get to like a deeper breathing practice if I can first just observe the experience of the thought. So thank you for that. And I also just wanted to say that it was super relatable to hear about what she was saying earlier, this lovely woman in front of me, about just like feeling helpless right now. That is one of my sticky thought patterns. And yeah, anyway, it's more of a comment, but
Yeah.
it's, it's validating.
Yeah. And I would say feeling helpless is one of the things that humans dislike the most. It's just nobody likes this feeling of helplessness. And so very often we're doing anything just so that we don't have to feel so helpless. And then, a lot of unskillful things happen. Yeah. But just to be able to acknowledge, like, oh yeah, here's that helplessness feeling and I don't like it, even just to recognize that can just make a big difference actually in one's life. Because what we'll do to not feel helplessness is quite something. So, thank you.
Actually, I do have one more. I have a question. Because I think I have like some form of ADD probably. Like my thoughts feel like a fever dream sometimes, where it's like an image, a word, and it just kind of flashes and I'll jump from thought to thought. So yeah, I would love some advice on just how to like slow down that like montage, if you will, of randomness.
Well, maybe a few things. Maybe to be curious about the randomness. Is it really random? Maybe there's a theme, but you're just not aware of them. And then maybe to have some curiosity about an emotion underneath. Is there something there that's connecting all of these? Maybe that's one thing to think about. A second is, you said that maybe there's images and voices. Maybe have a little bit of curiosity about, is there often, maybe here, I'll just say the question. What types of thoughts are images and what types are thoughts, are voices? And so that's just a different way to engage with them, and again that also kind of like takes the authority away from them. And so maybe it also can give you some insight, like, oh, that was an image, so what is, whatever you learn about what images are for you, they're not the same for everybody, or voices are for you. So just maybe bring some more curiosity to that. Anybody else have some comments or questions? Somebody on this side of the room? Does anybody have anything you'd like to say?
I have a question on a different topic, but it can wait. I'll be back next week, so I don't want to disturb if the topic is... Okay,
so we'll see if there's any more about thinking. And what do you think? Do you have any thoughts about thinking? You have a comment? Sure. Great.
Yeah, I just think I was very much like I felt like I kept on going into these random dreams. That in the first meditation, I was stuck in one. So when you gave the thought about just returning back to breath, and I did that, and I was able to get out of them this time. But I'm curious next time to try, is there a feeling behind it? Is there, what is the purpose of this dream? Because there just seems super random.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
Yeah, thank you. It's quite something. It's quite something when we start to really look at what's going on in here, right? It's quite something. That's a big part of what meditation practice, I know certainly for me, and I know for a lot of people too, we just didn't realize we had just been living our lives and not really paying attention, of course. And then when we start to pay attention, it can be surprising what's in there. Yeah, thank you. So I have a few concluding words here, unless somebody wants to ask something more about. So I'll just say a little bit about mindfulness. I talked about how we have this breath, body, emotions, thoughts. And often if you were to go to a meditation retreat, they would also kind of in that order, those would be the instructions during the meditation retreat in the morning, and then the afternoons would be Dharma talks. So if you wanted to really build on your mindfulness practice, meditation retreat, of course, is a great way to do that. Not everybody's life situation permits them, or maybe they don't even want to go to a residential retreat for a week or so. But I think many of you know we have a residential retreat center associated with us. We have a sister organization down in Santa Cruz. Beautiful location, beautiful down there. I just love it down there. But we also have at least once a month, I think here on Saturdays, a half a day where it's a sit, walk, sit. So some walking meditation, they'll give instructions on walking meditation. So that is, ends up being a couple hours. And there's something that's really special that can happen if we give the mind and the body a chance to just get more and more quiet. It's different than, here with shorter meditations. And something different can happen. So we have half days on, I think, one Saturday a month, as well as day long, so, like from 9 to 4, one Saturday a month. And those are also sit, walk, sit, and they have different themes, and there'll be different amount of teachings depending on the teacher. You could look at the description that's on our calendar. And at IRC Insight Retreat Center, our place down in Santa Cruz, we do have some 4-day retreats, but most of them are 7 days. And we also have some online 7-day retreats. And for a lot of people, we have hundreds of people attending these. It turns out to be really meaningful and impactful and very powerful. It can be surprising how you can turn your own home into this meditation center. It just is. I think all of us are surprised by how effective and powerful this has been with the pandemic. We just kind of started that. So that's one way to support this mindfulness practice. Of course, you can come here to IMC. You're welcome to everything IMC offers. So, of course, on Monday nights, I teach on Monday nights. Jim is often helping out. Sometimes he's a teacher also. Thank you, Jim, very much. And probably many of you know also on Sundays we have a sit and a talk, and on Thursday nights, Tanya Weiser teaches, and hers is when she teaches, there's a little bit more give and take. Well, we've been doing give and take here, and so it's a nice way to ask teacher questions and engage with other people, meet other people, and just talk about how your practice is doing and learn different things. So just offer that IMC is, everything here is freely offered. It's in the spirit of generosity. Some people do like to express their appreciation, kind of like their heartfelt, like, wow, this was really helpful. And so they would like to donate. If you're interested, absolutely no pressure. If you're interested, there's a donation box near the front door, and there's a little kiosk in kind of like this direction if you want to do something with credit cards. Also, the founder here, Gil Fronsdal, he's written a number of books, and one book is freely offered. It's called Issue at Hand. It's a great book. I think it's great. So one of those books is just a collection of short little essays. You could just open it up wherever and read it. They're near the front door. And if you like them in Spanish, they're on the back wall over there. And there's a newsletter also that has our schedule. There's lots of things happening here at IMC. We have all kinds of things happening here. And I think you had a question.
I was wondering, the English ones near the front door, Issue at Hand, are just the cards. The books were there like 2 weeks ago. I was wondering if there are more copies. They're all gone. It's just the QR code.
Oh.
The Spanish version, but the English ones are down.
Okay, well, I know which cabinets would hold them, so after this, I'll go look in those cabinets and see if they're there. But yeah, it might just be the QR cards right now. We do order like a whole bunch, thousands at a time. It turns out we even damaged the ramp up here because the books were so heavy coming up into this thing that we damaged the ramp out there. So just a little aside that we do try to have copies of the book here, but it's also freely available on our website, so there's a QR code if you want to just download it. Our website has so many articles that Gil has written, and probably you guys know about Audio Dharma, thousands of Dharma talks. It's quite something how many are up there. And
The app is great as well.
what was that?
The app is great as well.
Oh yeah, so there's an app that a subset of the Dharma talks just automatically go up on an app with I think me and Gil and Andrea Fella and Matthew Brent Silver and a few of our talks go up on there too. Am I forgetting anything, Jim, that you think would be helpful to say?
No, I think you covered it quite well.
Okay, thank you. So are there any last questions as we close this up? I mean, just this mindfulness and meditation session. I'll be back on next Monday. I have an idea of what I'm going to talk about. It'll be like an extension of mindfulness. Actually, I think I'm going to talk about some Brahma-Vihara practice next week. Brahma-Vihara, mindfulness, this loving kindness and compassion and kind of like more heart-centered practices. Turns out to be quite powerful. Okay. So thank you all for your attention and your practice. Thank you.